Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I am Attorney Coral Pleas, the host of the show, which is sponsored each and every week by Columbia Savings and Loan Association. So, shout out to Columbia and thank you to Columbia for sponsoring this show every week. You're listening to WNOV. This is 860 AM, 106.5 FM. That's gracious enough to host us each and every week for the Money Talk Show. So this morning, I have in the studio with me one of the board of directors from Columbia Savings and Loan Association, Dr. Mose Fuller. Dr. Fuller, say hello to the people.
Well, how's everybody doing this morning? It's just good to be here again with your sister players. And, I always do that. Your pastors, everybody's a sister and brother.
Hey, that's all right. Yeah, we're
Attorney players, it's just nice to be here again to talk about the great work that the bank is doing in this community.
Yes, and thank you for that. And I have no problem being called Sister Ples, Attorney Ples, or hey, you can just call me Coral. You can just call me however you're comfortable. So nope, I always know, and I'm always calling you Doc. I always have my little nicknames that I come up with for people. So I appreciate that you are Dr. Mose Fuller, but just my little way of shortening that and calling you Doc. So I appreciate that you let me do that. So now we've been working together for more than a year now. We definitely have that familiarity to have these names. So thanks for coming on today to talk about Columbia. One of the things we've been talking about is that it's April, so therefore it is Financial Literacy Month. And so every week in April, we've been coming in and bringing in different topics that relate to banking and financial literacy. So you have been on the board of directors for how long?
Over 5 years. I came on it about just before the pandemic really hit about 2018.
Okay.
2018.
Okay. Yeah. So even in a 5-year, going on 6-year period of time, so you've seen a lot and you've learned a lot, and so you're knowledgeable with respect to banking. But even prior to then, you were affiliated with Columbia because you transacted business, and you've shared that publicly before. So I'm comfortable saying that you've been a customer of this bank for how long now?
Since 1995. And for me, that's a big deal. It really is. Even the show that was on before, they was talking about, Black Chamber of Commerce, they talking about stuff, financial stuff. I mean, to have a bank, you look at us, and we already say this, when you talk about a banking, you really got to talk about kind of like the psychology of banking.
Right.
What kind of, how does that work in the community psychologically?
Mm-hmm.
We talk about food deserts and things like that, but then in the inner city of Milwaukee, we also have a bank desert. Now that is a real big deal if you're trying to access capital and do some real serious things in the community about, getting people buy homes and talking about the way money is circulating, buying homes, starting up businesses. Mm-hmm. And the mindset of our country now is that those are the type of things that we got to be doing.
Right.
And
you said, let me just cut in a second, because you said something that is so important that I want to go back. I want to wind it back and say it again with absolute clarity so people know what we're talking about. You mentioned the psychology of having a Black bank in the Black community.
That is huge.
Let's be real basic. Tell people what you mean by that. What are we talking about? The psychology of having a Black bank. Let's start with that.
When I was back in 2000, I was taking some classes at Holy Redeemer, the Compassionate Capital. George Bush had started some stuff like that. And Pastor Daniels had a lot to do with that. So any church could get in part of that program, and what they would do, they would go to Holy Redeemer, they would be to classes and things like that. And one of the things that Hattie Daniels talked about in the class is that, look, one of the most significant things that a pastor or anybody in the community can have is a relationship with a bank. See, because you can go in there, you can talk to the banker, you can talk to the banker, you just have a relationship. It's different when you just go into a bank, you got your money down, but you don't know anybody. The bank president don't want to talk to you. Nobody want to talk to you. They just appreciate you. Well, let me just rephrase that. Not necessarily appreciating you, but since you got money there, you can go to the bank. But they might, when you need a loan, they might not even lend you the loan,
Right.
even though you got money there. But Columbia is not like that. So that's what I mean about the psychology of banking. You got a relationship, that goes deeper than just you having money in the institution.
Okay.
You got a relationship with the president. You go now, you can talk to the president. It's on a more personal basis. So that, that makes you feel a lot better as a person, not only as a client, as a customer, but as a person. I can talk to the president when I want. We talk to each other about certain things, and then you build that rapport, you build that relationship. And for me, that is you. That's what Hattie Daniels said, and I knew she was right. I knew she was right, because when you look at Milwaukee, in the inner city of Milwaukee, look, you just don't have that stuff. You do not have it. You got other banks here that's scattered around here and now, but you don't have a bank where a black bank, and that's important, because if we understand why the bank was started in the first place, it's important, because when the Halyards came here, they didn't have that in the black community. Right. I mean, you couldn't even access capital. That's what the other people were talking about with the program we just left. That's the issue with black folks, is that not that we don't have the money. We have the money because we're spenders, and everybody else know that. And that's why they put all that stuff in the neighborhoods, all these little businesses that's on the corner and stuff like that. These service stations, they have all this old high gas, I look at this service station sometimes, me and my wife, right down the street, and this place right across the street here, man, got some of the highest gas in the city.
Yeah.
That, if I was an alderman, I would find out why. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to call my alderman and ask him, look, man, why does certain stations have gas that's so high compared to other stations? Now, that's a big deal.
It is, because
it's a big deal.
We're right here in the heart of the city.
Down the city.
But you drive to Mequon, and then the gas
is down. Even in some places in the city, it's down. But here this guy is sitting on Titonia, it's on 20th and Capitol, and he got some of the highest gases. I mean, for me, that's a problem.
And this is a smaller thing, but it's true. Everything adds up. The one thing that I've noticed is you're mentioning the gas prices, but even the machines to fill your tires, you pay, I don't know, a couple dollars or more to do it. If you're in the central city, you drive out to Ozaukee County, it's free.
Yeah. You guys free.
It's free out there.
Yeah,
So right where, the more the part of the community that has the most money has the least expenses when it comes to things like that.
Exactly.
People that have the least amount of money have the highest expenses when it comes to things like that.
And I think one of the reasons I think that it's like that too, because like you said, a lot of time we don't organize the way that we should. We don't, and I think one of the biggest reasons is that we don't use our political power, the way our voting power. Even when people win these automatic districts, they don't win by a whole lot of votes. Even when they win the mayor of the city of Milwaukee, it's not by a whole lot of votes. It's just like we just had an election here, and one of the things that happened is that folks actually went out there and voted. So we would use our political power to let folks know. And these politicians, they make a lot of the policy that affect folks in the neighborhood. And then we would use our power to vote, our real power, that can translate into economic power, which can really, and as a pastor, I know this is true, because why do I say it? Because we deal with people, and the same people that's in the neighborhoods are in our churches. Well, and these same folks are struggling.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask you, because you said something a little bit earlier, mentioning when you were in the training with Hattie Daniels. I know you mentioned her specifically.
Very good training.
Yeah.
Very enlightening.
Yeah. And I had the pleasure to know her too. I know she passed away.
Yeah, she won't be with the Lord
ago, but I did have the pleasure to meet her and work with her a little bit on some things. But so one of the things that you mentioned that she said is was she addressing a group of pastors? Is that what it was?
Right. It was a class, and they had pastors in the class, they had community people in the class, and then they had other people that just was from other churches.
Okay.
Church members.
Okay.
Yeah, pastors. My wife was in the class. She's a church member. Other folks in the class, and then community people and pastors and community activists and leaders that was in the class. And she was talking about the significance of having a good bank.
Right.
So, that's one thing about Columbia Savings and Loan. Of all of the history of this city, we used to have more than just one bank. North Milwaukee State Bank.
Right.
And then they had Legacy Bank. And then North Milwaukee State Bank had more than just one branch.
Right.
Think about that. The psychology of that, having more than one branch. Now, all of a sudden now, all of the branches of North Milwaukee State Bank is gone, and all Legacy Bank is gone, all those other is gone. So now you just got one.
Right.
That's got to have a psychological effect on the community.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And so basically what I'm saying here is that Milwaukee got too many black folks in this community and to just have only one bank, one black bank.
Right.
The money is here. It's that we need to, actually what black folks need to be doing now as a pastor, and I'm talking to folks because, and I do this on Sunday mornings at my church. I tell, look, we got to learn how to shop with each other. We got to learn how to spend our money with each other. And we definitely got to learn how to bank with each other.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. I know you said that we've got too many black people in the community to have only one bank. I'll rephrase that a little bit. We've got enough black people in the community that the one and only bank that we have should be prospering majorly, because we should have in our community the people that have the dollars to come and put your money in the black owned bank.
That's the idea, like Columbia Savings. What I was really saying is that Columbia Savings and Loan has been around for 100 years. We should have more than one branch. Okay. You're exactly right.
Right, right.
And so that's where we are.
But right now we need to make sure we get that branch doing what it needs to do, functioning as it needs to function, prospering as I know that it can and should and is and ought to continue to prosper, but it needs support from the community. It
needs support from the community. It needs pastor. As a pastor, here's what I would say as a pastor, it needs pastoral support. It really does. Because here's what I know. I know a lot of pastors. And a lot of pastors got money. And, and people can put their money where they want to put it, but I'm just saying the ideal of working together to build community that you can help community. That's what Columbia needs. All of these black folks, all of these pastors here, all of these folks that got money here in this community, should be making a beeline to just come down and talk to somebody at Columbia Savings and Loan. When you do come down and do that, then you make your decision from that. But I think when you come down and talk to somebody, you're going to make the right decision. I've worked on the fire department for almost 30 years. And I was in a discussion.
City of Milwaukee?
Yeah, City of Milwaukee. Almost 30 years. And we was in a discussion with a battalion chief, white battalion chief. And we was in the firehouse. In the firehouse, you have all kinds of discussions about what's taking place in the world, in the city, in the state, the county. And so one of the white battalion chiefs told me, he said, you know what, Mose, I tell you right now. And they were talking about one of the car dealerships that they had. I think they had one black car dealership in the city at that time. I don't think that they have any now. Fred Jones dealership down here out on West Capitol.
Yeah, I remember that name.
And so I bought a couple of cars. And I found out that he owned a car dealership. I said, next car I buy, and the next car I'm able to buy, I'm gonna make sure that I go to his dealership and buy the car. And that's what I did. And this is what this white battalion chief said. He said, Mose, he said, we was all in the firehouse having this discussion. So he said, I know where I would buy a car from. If I was buying a vehicle, it would be Fred Joe. That's what he said. And so really, and I think that sometimes, black folks don't see that, is that if you got a bank, one black bank, and you want that bank to thrive, you want your community to thrive. And I'm telling you right now, this is what April is Financial Literacy Month, and so one of the things that you got to really understand is how money works, and if you want that money to circulate in your neighborhood, then you got to have a place where it can be distributed from, and people can buy things that's going to keep you in that neighborhood, housing and things like that. Which is in the black community of Milwaukee, there is a deficit in housing, of decent housing. And one of the ways that you're able to do that, instead of renting so much, is being able to buy you a house and go to an institution that will make that possible. And one of the places that will make that possible, I know it because it worked for me. It's Columbia Savings and Loan.
Right.
My church, and you guys that there's you finance my house and my church. All of the renovations on the church and everything that I've had done to that church since I've been over there on Tatonia Nash, Columbia Savings and Loan has done it. Same thing with my house.
Yeah. And so I circle that back to what you mentioned about having a relationship with the bank. And because the president of the bank at that time came to know you and over the years, right, and developed a relationship. So the things that you needed to have happen, and he saw what you were able to do, and you get the loan that you need. The church gets up and running. The payments were made on time. And that's key too as well with all of this.
And and that's what you got to make the payments on time. See, and I told him, I said, look, man, I'm going to make sure. I said, I'm going to make sure that the payments are made. And if the church is not able to do it, I'm going to do it out of my pocket. Because I had been responsible with my finances, working, you don't work for almost 30 years on a job and be irresponsible. You get up, you go to work, you know what you got to do. You save, as much of your money as you can. You invest as much of the money as you can so that you have, that you're liquid, that you're not, you're not broke. And so those are some of the things I told him. But over the years, we developed a relationship. Now, here's the thing that happened with developing a relationship. So it came to a point that developed a relationship. And so now, talking to him every day, I go in his office and talk. And then about, everything, that's how you get to develop a relationship. You talk about not only banking stuff, but other stuff. When he had some medical issues, I'm a pastor, guess what? I visited him at the hospital, prayed with him. Prayed with him and talked about things and when you was see, when people in the hospital, then a whole lot of stuff come to light. There's our mortality comes into play. Our we realize that one day we're going to exit this thing, and the older you get, the more that becomes a reality. And so that's all of that is in the place. See, all of that is part of the real issues of being a human in your financial issues and things like that. Money is significant, but then the first thing is that we're human also. And so we understand that one day we're going to transition. So you want to have those type of relationships that when you're in your most vulnerable time, when your time of sickness, you can have somebody you can talk to and understand the impact of sickness and everything else you dealt with. And so that happened. So we all those good relationships. And then all of a sudden, there was an opening for a board member. I never even thought about doing anything like that, director, And so because we have relationship, they come to me and say, Pastor Fuller, and I said, man, I don't know. And I procrastinated. I did for at least a year. You know what I mean?
It is a tremendous responsibility.
Yeah, I did. And I said, man, I really don't want to, if I want these folks looking into my background, looking up stuff. And, you tell me, the application was long, all your financial stuff, church financial stuff, everything. Right. I said, then every time I would go in and still talking, well, have you thought about it? I said, yeah, man. It's a one day, man. It finally, I said, okay. Kind of like Delilah when she broke Samson down.
Yeah. Okay.
But, so she kept on prodding him. And so all of a sudden, I said, okay, man. Okay, I'll do it. Yeah. And so that's what happened. So I thank God that I did, because I can see that you have an opportunity there that you can really help people. You can really make a difference in people's lives. Right. You can really do some things that could help people. Then when you get people to understand how money works and the value of money and what you should be doing with some of your money that you make and how you should be invested in the community. Right. So I just think that right now in this community, there is definitely a deficit as it relates to financial awareness.
Yeah. Well, I for one sure am glad you came on the board of directors when you did, and I know how hard you work and serve and continue to support the organization. So we'll talk more about all of that after the break, but we do have to take a break right now. We'll be back with more money talks with Attorney Coral with Pastor Mose Fuller. Thank you. Welcome back to Money Talks. This is Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I'm Attorney Coral Pleas, and I am very fortunate to have in the studio with me this morning Dr. Mose Fuller, who is one of the directors on the board of directors of Columbia Savings and Loan Association. Dr. Fuller, thank you again for being here.
It's just a pleasure to be here. It really is.
So we're talking in keeping with it being April, Financial Literacy Month, just throwing some topics out there relative to the bank. And you really did a great job of explaining and talking about the psychology of having a Black bank in the Black community and how important and significant that is. But one of the things that I wanted to mention, just so people know, this is one of those things that we were talking on the break that in my mind just kind of goes without saying, but sometimes I think we have to take a step back and make sure as we are educating people for financial literacy that people understand that Columbia Savings and Loan Association is a business. It's not a foundation. It's not a nonprofit. It's a business that has to generate revenue in order to continue to exist. We have a staff that they're not volunteers. They show up because they work there, and people work for a living so that they can earn their way in the world. We've got to keep the lights on. We've got to pay taxes. We have to do anything that businesses have to do in order to survive. And so it's one of the reasons I just want to bring that up is how important it is for people to support the bank. And if you have a loan with the bank, to pay that loan on time. And if you have deposits at the bank, then you're trusting us to be a good steward of your money. And we have to do that by doing deals that make sense, that will make money, so that we make sure that our depositors are secured. So there's a lot that goes into this. We've got strong leadership that's mindful of all of this and more. But we're over there and we work very, very hard. And I won't take the liberty to speak specifics, but trust when I tell you that some of the top leadership of the bank has sacrificed by going without in order just to make sure that things would be good, in a time when things were lean. Well, we have worked very hard and brought things forward, and the bank is very stable and doing very, very well right now. And I think it's okay for me to say that from a public standpoint, but we want to keep that up, and we want to continue to grow, and we want to continue to do well. And so we really need the support of the community to do the community's part. Come in and support the bank, put deposits in the bank. And if you're already a customer of the bank, go ahead and open a savings account. Amen. If you've got a loan with the bank, go ahead and open, another type of depository account with the bank. But just so we can continue to serve and grow and develop our community. It's a partnership. We do need the support, like any other business needs the support of the community that it's in, or that business won't prosper as it should, right? So again, the bank is doing very well, and we want it to continue to do very well. So I am imploring then the community to come and continue to support this bank. Sometimes we get a lot of criticism, and we do receive constructive criticism. I know I do, because I'm the first one to get the call at the bank, and I try to provide the best service and do the very best that we can to resolve any issues that come up, questions that people have, and we're right there doing the very best that we can. And I can say that the people that talk to me or come in and meet with me leave satisfied. They leave happy, they leave content, because whatever the issue or whatever the question, things get addressed and things get handled. If they need to be handled, sometimes it's just a matter of educating that customer. Right. Sometimes I sit them down and just give an explanation, and then they say, oh, okay. But yeah, I just want to stress, it is important. If you have a loan with us, pay that loan, pay it on time. That's how we keep things going. That's how we pay our staff. That's how we keep our expenses and everything that we need in order, just as any other business must. This is not a for-profit organization. This is a bank. This is a real business. Okay, that's what I wanted to say. Go ahead, Dr.
And that is so important. That's one of the things that takes me back to when I got my first account at Columbia Savings and Loan back in that. Remember, we was a relatively new church. We started in 93, organized in 93, 95. We was already buying a building. And so we had the funds. And so, but I know that, not only did we have now, but I was thinking long-term, futuristic, we got to make sure that we are able to pay this thing over the next 20 or 25 years or whatever it's going to take to pay this loan off. So I was thinking that way. And one of the things that I did not want to do was get behind in payments. I think when you have that business mindset and you understand and the responsibility of being accountable, I had to be accountable, like I'm a pastor, I'm trying to buy a church, be accountable to God, be accountable to the people, be accountable to my loan partner, which Columbia Savings and Loan was. I think that is so important that we do pay our bills on time. That helps your credit rating and all of that. And see, a lot of times we don't do that because, sometimes it's because we don't understand how money really works. Here's what I know for a fact. That if you haven't been paying your bills on time and you do have bad credit, you're not going to go to any other institution and you're not going to get a loan. And in Columbia, Savings and Loan demands that same type of professionalism. Is that, you pay your bills on time. That's just responsibility. That's a responsibility, accountability, and all of that stuff is in the play there when you pay your bills on time. But here's the thing about it. I talk about relationships. Sometimes things happen in people's lives. The human component. Mm-hmm. As a pastor, I know that's the case. Pastors got issues. We all got issues. We all got issues. Abraham had issues. David had issues. Everybody had issues.
Right.
All of the great, the patriarchs of the Bible. Moses had issues. And we all got issues. And so, but when you have a relationship with the bank and you understand the necessity of having a bank in the community, when you understand the necessity of having access to capital, and basically that's why this bank was started, because people didn't have access. We should always, anytime we talk about black banking in the city of Milwaukee, anytime we talk about black banking, period, even if it's not in the city of Milwaukee, we should ask ourselves the question, why? Why did we have to have specifically about, you talk about accessing money, a black bank? Because you're going to get money in place else from the white bank. That's why. That's a reality. It was a reality back in the 20s when they came here. And it was definitely a reality when they came in the 20s. Before then, in the 1800s. And then in 2025, it's still a problem with black folks accessing capital.
Yeah.
And black people know that.
And do you feel that here we are 100 years later, have we taken a step back in that regard?
Well, in a sense, when we talk about the psychology of banking, you have to conclude to a certain extent that you have actually taken a step backwards, because here's why I say that. Here's why Pastor Fuller says that. Because at one time, I was living in this city where they had more than one black bank.
We did have 3 at one time.
Now we just got 1.
Right.
And then here we are on the radio and trying to encourage the community, which is, and there's a whole lot of black folks in this city. There's a whole lot, over 200,000, and a whole bunch of those got money.
And businesses.
And so now, so what I'm saying, like that white guy told me at that firehouse, if I was going to buy a vehicle, I know where I would go.
And he said he would go to Fred Jones.
He said if he was black, he would go to Fred Jones.
Oh, if he was black, he would go to Fred Jones.
See, now that's a big deal.
Okay, all right.
Now I got it. Now, see, that's a big deal, because that's a huge statement.
Right.
Because what he's telling me, he said, look, what he was really telling me in a sense, he said, white folk go shop with white folks.
Right.
And so, and black folks should be doing the same thing up to if you ain't got to have all your money there, you got to have some of it. You should have some of it there. And that just makes a lot of sense. As a pastor, for me to say something differently wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It really wouldn't. because I understand that most of the vast majority of people gonna come to my church are gonna come from a certain locale. In fact, all of these, like over here at St. Mark's, right up the street here, a vast majority of those folks, they, if they're not coming down now, maybe sometimes you look at the psychology of churches, a lot of the churches are older. So I look at some of these churches right now, St. Mark's has an older congregation. I know that because it's been around for a long time. And so the people that go to St. Mark's, old congregation, so a lot of time when you get older, then you really do need, and a lot of people that go to St. Mark's probably have the money at Columbia saving them along, at one time or whatever. So those churches are older, they have an older congregation. And then, so what we should be telling our younger congregation is that, and a lot of those people like myself, I've been around this city for a long time too. I've been here since 1969. So, that's quite that's I was 17 when I came. Now I'm 73. See, so I've been here a while. And so that's why I know the mindset and the psychology of this city has never really been good for Black folks. So that's one of the reasons why we do need to stick together.
Yeah, and so that's why it just kind of occurs to me, right? I'm just thinking back historically, right? So 100 years ago, the Halyards said, well, we're not able to get loans at the white institutions, so let's start our own, right? And so my understanding is, just from reading history, well, look at the whole Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? Let's talk about that a little bit too, and just make that parallel. That there were everything was Black owned in the communities, right? Black banks, Black barbershops, Black grocery stores, Black
hotels,
whatever you could think of.
Doctors' offices,
doctors' offices, right? Community thriving, right? Because the people that live there are investing and spending their money in the communities in which they live. People were prospering and doing well, and it seemed that the Halyards had the same idea to do that here. And from what I understand, it was working, that there were in the community at that time Black owned businesses, but before they put the I-43 highway there, that disrupted a whole lot.
Walnut Tree up and down Walnut.
Yeah. And then, however well intended things were with, and this is Coral Pleas's opinion only, right? But people were very well intended with the whole civil rights movement, but we fought for the right to spend our money in the white-owned establishments. And that's all well and good, but we've made them richer and us poorer, which is why now we're even having this conversation, because the only Black-owned bank in the state of Wisconsin shouldn't be on the radio saying, hey, Black community, come and bring your business here. That should be automatic.
Oh, that should be. It should be automatic. If you want to talk about progress, you want to talk about, passing on, money to your loved ones. I have one grandson, and I would hate to want him to struggle the way I struggle just to make it, in Milwaukee and in America. But if we look at the political climate where we are right now, and you really can't talk about this stuff unless you include that a mentality of the political factor, and that's why our vote is so important. See, we're gonna come on ready and talk about that. Then we have to talk about a lot of other things too, and that's why it's so important. But in Milwaukee, as it relates to Black folks thriving, the Halyards understood the basic foundation of how that was going to happen. If we can't access capital to get a home, to get a barber shop, or to finance a funeral, or whatever that we're trying to do, then we just won't be able to. We will always be marginalized.
Right.
We will always be struggling to define ourselves, to define an identity, to build an economic base. And to build an economic middle class that is going to thrive and that is going to pass on legacy to their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And that's what we're really talking about. That's why the vision, when they talk about the founding vision and mission of the Halyards, that's what they was dealing with, man. And that's the same thing that you and I are talking about right now on this radio station is the same concept, except we're talking about it 100 years later.
Right.
They were looking for a building. They were looking for, for the thing to get the paperwork to organize it. We got the building. We got the paperwork. Everything is in place. But it's the mentality of the community to see the necessity of wanting to pass something on to the next generation. I think one of I'm not saying that this is the bank is doing good. Columbia Savings and Loans are doing good. I want everybody to listen to Pastor Fuller right now that Columbia Savings and Loan is doing great.
Amen.
We're talking about opportunity to go to the next level.
Right.
That's all we're talking about. We're not out here like begging or anything like that. We're doing great. Doors open, people are getting paid. But we want the larger community to understand how they can be an impact, a difference maker in the vision. Amen. That the Helliard started over 100 years ago. And then the bank is still here. The building that Columbia Savings and Loans is one of the, I haven't really seen a lot of banks, and I've been to some bank buildings. It just is any better than that building.
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. Yeah,
great vision went into that. So we just want to understand and open our people, to get our people to see that, well, hey, you know what? I need to be a part of this vision as we move further into the 21st century. I want to be a part of this legacy that this bank has been building for 100 years, is building, and is going to build for another 100 years. I want to be a part of that, and I'm going to do everything that I can to be a part of that. That's our call to the community. That's our clarion call to the community, is that we want core investors in this community to be a part of that vision, to be a part of that mission, to carry this bank into the 21st century.
Absolutely. To progress, to continue to progress. That's what we're talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. No, I couldn't have said it any better, Doc Fuller. One other thing that you mentioned earlier is that your thought is that people in the community, in a general statement, obviously just a general statement, don't necessarily understand how money works. Oh, what did you mean by that? Explain that a little bit.
Well, in order to really understand how money works, you got to have a money mindset. You know what I mean? A lot of times people don't save because they don't have money mindset. I used to do drugs and alcohol counseling at my church through the county. And we did that for 5 years. And so a lot of people at that council, they had drug problem, alcohol problem. In that way, they didn't have no respect for money. They had a disrespect for money. They disrespected money. I had a lot of folks that used to come and sit in front of me, and I used to do one-on-one at my church up here. Very enlightening for me. And because you could see how people that got a check every month, and on the 5th of the month, they don't have no money. They didn't save any money. They didn't pay any bills. They just squandered the resources, squandered the money.
So is that what you mean when you said a disrespect for money?
Yeah. Oh man, a disrespect for money, and then you don't have a money mindset. Nobody. See, one of the things where you develop a money mindset, if you got children in the family, you need to be talking about money. You need to be talking about, investing. You need to be talking about, even if it's a for as early as they can understand it. Putting something away for that kid, starting a little saving account for that kid, a little investment account. They got little accounts that you can start, for your kid, or and things like that. You can get that going. Just talking about money in the home. When I was coming up in Mississippi, we never really did that, and that's a real deficit for families. When families don't talk about that, when families don't talk about the significance of doing something with your money once you get your check, you don't spend it all. You put some, you should be paying. If I'm a tither, and we believe in tithing in our church, we say we don't believe in paying 10% of your money, as a tither. If I'm going to pay 10% of my money as a tither, I'm going to pay 10%. I'm going to try to invest 10% of my money into some type of investment account or some type of savings account, so that when I get my check, I don't spend it all. That's kind of like a money mindset. And then once you start understanding money and understanding, I got to think about money is not dirty. Money is helped me get some things that I need in this life. If I want a house, I know I'm gonna get it because I have some money, food, and all that stuff, right? And then you also want to have a good institution that you can go to that respects you as a person, not just accept you as your money. And we know the Harriers knew that, and Milwaukee, because that was Milwaukee's history. That they had a history, not only Milwaukee, but a lot of other larger cities. They had a history of not lending money to black folk, Hispanic folk, brown folk, folk that wasn't a certain color, and that's the history of America. And so that's what we got to do. That look here, everybody come in and talk about this financial stuff. That's what they're talking about. And believe it or not, you have an administration in office right now want to take us back to those days. That's the nonsense of really of disrespecting people and not caring about the least of these. And let me say this, since we're talking about Columbia Savings and Loan, one thing that Columbia Savings and Loan did, Milwaukee, is they cared about the least of these.
Okay.
That's what they did. I was listening to something that, Biden just left office and he was talking about, when you're making policy. Are we going to take a break right now?
Yeah, we're leading up to it, but go ahead.
Okay.
And finish your thought,
making a statement about, look, if you're going to have policies, what you got to do, just like Columbia Savings and Loan did, and Halyards did in our vision, they wanted to do something that they looked across the community, surveyed the landscape of the city of Milwaukee, and they found and they noticed that a lot of the larger institutions that had capital wasn't concerned about the least of these in the city of Milwaukee.
All right. Well, thanks to Columbia Savings for having a very
big
different
deal.
vision. That's a huge deal.
Yep.
And
that's the psychology of banking.
Here's my scripture for the morning before we go to break. So money answereth all things.
Oh yeah.
Right? Yep. That one I know. Okay, we'll be right back after the break.
The Voice.
Welcome back. This is Money Talks with Attorney Coral. I'm Attorney Coral Pleas, and I have Dr. Mose Fuller from Columbia Savings and Loan Association Board of Directors in the studio with me this morning. And continuing our April financial literacy, we've been talking about different money-related topics as relates to Columbia Savings and Loan Association. And throughout the show, I have been encouraging the community, whether it's individuals, whether it's organizations, whether it's businesses, to come and do business with Columbia Savings and Loan Association. Come and open a savings account. Come and open a CD. Park your money there so we can come and use that money to do good things in the community. Columbia, under its current leadership, I can't speak highly enough of the president and CEO of our bank, Mr. Ernest Jones, and under his leadership, this bank is thriving.
Yep.
This bank is prospering.
Yep.
And we are looking absolutely great on paper, better than the bank has ever before. But nonetheless, we want to go to another level. We're not comfortable, even though we're succeeding. We want to prosper and we want to grow. So that's the clarion call, as you said earlier, Doc, that we're making today for people to come out and be in support of this organization, because this organization supports our community and the growth of our community. Doc Fuller, what do you want to say about all
just
that?
adding to that, that is important. Understanding that the president of the bank is well qualified, his attorney,
The president of the bank is brilliant.
Yeah, really is. And young man. See, that's important to understand. Young man. Important to understand. And not only that, he has the training, he has the knowledge, the insight, the wisdom, to lead an institution like that. He's been in banking over 20 years. He worked inside all of the stuff about banking. Attorney Ernest Jones understands it, comprehends it. And as you said, Attorney Pleas, is that the bank is in great shape. Now we're making a call. We're asking the community to get behind the vision of this institution that was started over 100 years ago by the Halyards, and to carry this bank and further into the 21st century for another 100 years. Now, we know that in order for that to happen, we need core depositors, people that want to come in and put money in the bank and help the bank thrive, help the bank grow, help the bank mature, help the bank to become all that it can be in the community, because you have the community behind it. That's how banks grow. All of the big banks and things in this community, that's how they grow. People put money in it. And here's what I know. Here's what I know, that Black people in this community have money. They have money.
Yeah.
And so
you know that.
I know that they have money. I know preachers that got money. So, last time out here, I made a call to preachers, and I still make the same call. Pastors, put some of your money in Columbia Savings and Loan. Some of you might already have money in there. Put some more there. Really. So this is a big deal, man. So this is how we take this bank further into the 21st century. This is how we get this bank to be the bank in the community, to be in the area where we have bank deserts, where they can really help people that really need, that might think that they can't get a home, buy a house, buy a home, or whatever. This bank that can help them do it.
All right. Well, what a positive note to end on. Thank you again, Dr. Fuller, for coming and talking with us today. This was Money Talks with Attorney Coral and Dr. Mose Fuller. Thank you so much for being here. We will see everyone next week. Thank you for listening.
$868